Good morning and good afternoon. The Resco webinar about new features of our latest release is just about to start, and my name is Juraj Mojik. I'm a senior developer here at Resco, and I'm quite sure that many of you know my voice or know me personally from some of our meetings and conferences. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on YouTube shortly afterwards. Also with all the files and some of the examples that I will be showing today. If you are watching from the YouTube, you will find the links in the section below the video. The ones who are live on the webinar are available to ask questions. If you do have some questions, feel free to write them into the GoToWebinar window because you are all muted, so you cannot ask by voice, but please do so in writing. So I'm going to start right away with Resco Mobile CRM 10.0, our spring release for 2017. As usual, it was released in the first quarter of 2017, April 6th. And it's really feature-packed, 40 new features, and this time quite big ones, ones that I think will bring a lot of additional value to your already existing projects or the projects you are only starting to work on. Here is the list. I'm going to go through image editor and annotations, a nice little feature, as well as in-app chat editor, list headers, and the completely redesigned route planning. Then I'll talk and try to show offline maps and increased precision of the height setting on Flexi Forms. And then we will take a look at more complex customizations like the mobile reports, editable list validations, and what we have added into the form rules. Since there is a lot of material to go through, I think this will take approximately 1 hour, so I'll better start right away with the improvements that are right in the application. So the first thing is a nice little feature, which I think will be very beneficial for some of the scenarios like inspections and similar, where you can edit or annotate images. So if you are on notes or cloud documents, and this can be enabled also for the media tab, you can take a note, take a picture, for example, and hit edit image. And right there in the notes or cloud documents or in the media tab, you will be able to crop the existing image, for example, rotate it or draw some lines on top with setting colors, opacity, or even thickness. This is particularly useful for situations like imagine a car rental service where you would like to draw on the photo of a car where the actual damage on the car is present. Or this can be used to draw on some predefined schemes like, okay, the damage or the problem was on this part of the actual building, car, machinery, whatever. Building on top of the business intelligence that we already tried to enrich quite a lot in our previous releases, we also wanted to give the users the ability to define their own charts. So this is a way how the users, not the administrators, can create and define their own private charts. They will have to head into the setup section of the mobile application and define their chart in there. But the actual chart has to be that, or will be then stored only on the device, so it will be not synchronized to the server, it will be only available in that particular device. Once the chart is defined, it can be used wherever other charts are used. So for example, for the charts of the identity or on the views that can be flipped to chart, or even on the dashboards. And the good news is that you can even combine this with the private dashboards. So on the private dashboard that the user has designed, they can also put a private chart. I can't even count how many times we have heard this request that on the lists or on the views, on the very top, you would like to have a header. something that would indicate to the user which column or which cell corresponds to which field, put some names basically there, what you can see. So for example, here on the screenshot, you can see that there are some columns, and on the top of them there is a little header. This header, it will be created automatically, and there are a couple of configuration options in the mobile project, in the configuration section, something called auto list header. This automatic list header can be added for all the views. This is the setting called always. Or it can be added only to auto-generated views, which have the look like the one which I have on the screenshot. That's the white setting. Or it doesn't have to be used at all. Besides showing which field corresponds to which column, it can be used to change sorting. So something maybe you are used from Dynamics CRM or even some file explorers and similar types of tools. And what we are working already is to the ability to customize the design, because as I said, currently the design, the look of this header is auto-generated. And also we are working on the footer, so some information on the bottom of the view where there can be some counts and some additional information, but more on that in future releases. Finally, we have redesigned the route plan. And the need to do this was mostly coming from the smaller screens, so phones. There, the route planning component was not really usable. So we have made some design changes to make it available also for phones and not only for tablets. But also we wanted to make sure that the operation of the route plan is slightly easier, that the look is more comprehensive and simplified, and the usability is much more what users would expect. So let's take a look at all these features right in the demonstration. So as usual, I will try to share the screen of my iPad. Here we go. And this is a customization that I have prepared beforehand. So let's start with the first feature, which was image annotation. So let's continue with the car rental idea or demonstration. I have an account here called car rental, and I have added a note here on that account. If I open that and switch to attachments, you will see a picture of a car, and maybe it's not immediately apparent, but there is a damage on that car. It's in the top right part. If I want to indicate the damage here, I can edit the image, which will reopen the image with some handy tools on the bottom. And if I click on this part, you will see that there are some additional settings. So for example, I can rotate the image or I can crop the image. So we'll try, for example, that one. I can draw a line. If I click here, I can select color. If I click here, I can select thickness. And if I click here, I can select the opacity. So I can indicate that, okay, yeah, here is probably something that should be taken care of. And I am done. I can just save my image. This will be now saved over the node. Okay, this is probably something I have done wrong, but in any way, it's saved over the same node. So once you will upload that to the Dynamics CRM server, it will be present there, and the original image will be overwritten. So something to take care of. The next feature I have talked about were the user charts. So if I go into the setup and slide a little bit down, I can see the section private charts. If I click on that, I can define my own chart. And here I will go for the example of opportunities. And I want to display my opportunities based on the customers. And for each customer, I would like to know what is the actual revenue and what was the estimated revenue. So to create such a chart, I can click on the plus button here on the top and create a new chart for the opportunity entity. So here I'm defining my series, and this is basically a simplified or almost the same dialogue as the administrators have to define charts in the Woodford tool. So I will select series. So I said we want to compare the actual revenue. We want to sum it. And let's keep color red. But I also want to compare it to the estimated revenue. So for series, I will select estimated revenue. I will select sum. And I will change color to, for example, green. I also mentioned that I want to have this grouped by the customers. So for each customer, I want to see how much opportunities revenue they are doing. And I can even set the drill down fields or, for example, chart style. So I want to, for this bar chart, I want it to be grouped. And this means that I'm done. So as soon as I go to opportunities, switch to chart, and change it to the chart section, you can see that now my private chart is available here. Similarly, when I go to the dashboard and click here on the top, you will see that there is my private chart. And I mentioned that also this can be done for the private dashboard. So I can quickly go to the setup, find the design dashboard section, create a very quick private dashboard. And for the sake of the presentation, I will just add one item there. It will be again the opportunity. And here I will set that it will show only charts. And the chart I want to show is the private chart. So you will see that also private charts can be present on the private dashboards. As soon as I have done this, my dashboard section has appeared and I can show my private chart in my private dashboard. The next part were the list headers. And maybe you have noticed this as I was browsing through the application. But let's start with contacts. So this is the auto-generated view. That means that the look of this view was automatically generated to better adjust to this larger screen, so it's wide. And immediately on the top, you can notice that there is this header showing that this is the full name, this is the mobile phone, and this is the email. If I will tap on those header fields, the sorting will change. This is a setting which is actually by default enabled. So for all the wide views, this header will be automatically generated. So this is by default. But what I have done in my customization, I have changed this to display for all the views. So now I also have it on my standard account view. And again, the functionality is what you would expect. By tapping on those, I can change the sorting for the city or for the postal code or again for the account name and so on. And as I said, this list header, this look is currently generated automatically, and with this version you cannot customize it, but this is something that will come in the next version. The fourth feature I talked about was redesign of the route plan. So here is my route plan. Again, I have added this in my customization. And if you have worked with this feature, you can immediately notice that there are slight differences in this right part. It looks just a little bit different. But you will notice the difference as soon as I will start adding the points. So let's add this one. And this is a new thing. Instead of immediately adding that point into the root, there is now a dialog that basically asks for some additional information, like I can put a different name to the appointment, I can adjust the start and end times. And I can decide if I want to save it, which will actually create the appointment right away, which is a difference to what was previously that the appointments were created only when you save the whole route. Or I can click back, and in this case it will be only added to the route and saved with the save button as previously. So I've opted for that. I can add another point, and as again you will see that there is the dialog providing some additional information if I want, and once I'm done, the route is being shown to me and constructed as I go. Now, I mentioned that this was required for the phones and for smaller screens. So I will now try to rotate my iPad. Okay, I hope you are still seeing this. And now you have noticed that the map was actually minimized on the very top. And I'm working here with the list of my route. If I expand the map by clicking on the little arrow on the top, I can still work with the map. I can add additional point. You will notice that here now I can add the details. And if I click back, I can check my route again. So for the phones, this is the workflow. So again, if I want to add another point, I will click into the top. This will show me the map. I can add a point. Now I can add additional information, and if I'm done, I can click back. What's also improved and quite nice is that I can very easily reschedule the appointments that are there. So by tapping on this part where the menu is, I can just take the, I can just quickly grab one of the appointments and move it to the other point. Also, as in the previous version, you have now some detections that the time is probably not enough and that I would probably need to do some adjustments. And by clicking on these little exclamation marks, I can automatically adjust the times so they will be set to the proposed route time as defined by the routing algorithm. So this was the route plan. It's redesigned for the phones, but as well as the tablets. It can be used there as well, which concludes this first demo, and I will go back to my presentation. So the next section will be more about some features that needs a little bit of configuration. And the first one is quite a big one in my opinion, and that is the offline map feature. This means that with this version 10.0, you can on iOS start using maps also without connectivity. We are already working on the Android version, so with hopefully next release, we will have both these platforms covered. And what is important to know here is that it uses Mapbox. That's the provider for the offline maps. And this is basically a feature or a tool that allows much more than just offline maps. There are actually different maps provided by a different vendor. And there are also ways how you can put your own custom maps there, put custom layers on top, and so on. But we will get to that later with some other release. This also means that in the setup screen there is yet another option, where you have to set up that you want to use this provider and set mapbox in there. So now, how is this set up? The administrators specify regions for the users. That means that for every mobile project, you have to set up which regions will be used. These regions will be downloaded during synchronization and therefore will be available without connectivity. With this version, these regions are defined in XML file. That's the only downside of this approach for this very moment. It works the way that you have to create a file called offline map XML with this case and put it into root folder of the mobile project exported file. I will show you this in the demonstration. The XML file basically defines the regions. You have to provide some name for the region, the rectangle defining the region, so the northeast, so basically top left corner of your region, and southwest, so bottom right corner of your region using latitude and longitude. You also have to define the minimum and maximum zoom level. It's from 1 to 16, and which map type you want to use. The street style, that's the most common, or the satellite style, or some combined, and some less used styles like the light or dark. This is how one actual XML looks like. So it starts with the regions, and one of the regions looks, for example, like this. It's the region for Word, so basically the full map. It's only from the zoom 1 to 4, so not very detailed, and it's also only for the street type of map. Then I have also another region, which is in Bratislava. As you can see, now the rectangle is much smaller, and the zoom level is from 4 to 16, so this is much more. Even with this setting, the download can take a lot of time. From my tests, this was at least 5 minutes to download these regions. So please consider that when defining it for the users. But what is important is that this is not only for the offline maps, but the Mapbox offers different types of maps than the standard providers, than Apple Maps or Google Maps. And this is useful for restricted regions. So some regions, I've heard our customers complain that the maps from Apple or maps from Google are not really good for that region. So you can use Mapbox map instead. Also, specifying regions not via XML in Woodford is already on our to-do list. One more feature which I have put into the part about customization is considering our new form UI. I'm sure you have already heard about this. It's the Flexi Form so-called UI, where instead of tabs on forms, you have these boxes or elements on the screen. Previously, you could define the height of these elements only in some weird way by specifying some number, which meant, I don't know, the amount of records in a view, or something very strange for signatures or maps. Right now, you can define this in something like pseudopixels. They are not real pixels, because depending on different dots per inch, they can be not a real pixel, they can be 2 pixels or even more. But they are specific, exact for, so if you set one element to 200 pixels, it will be the same height as the next element, which is also 200 pixels. So all you have to do is put into the height property number and px afterwards. I recommend using it for iframes and views, especially maps, media tabs, and so on. I don't recommend using it on the details, so on these types of elements. The reason is that the behavior is basically undefined. I'm not saying it will crash, it will definitely not crash, it will work, but there will be additional scroll bar, and the behavior will be something we really don't want to take care of. So we don't recommend using that on details. So let's see these two features in the in action. So I will start with the offline maps, and to do that I will have to go into Woodford and here is the project that I'm already using. Since the synchronization of the offline maps can take quite some time, I've decided to synchronize them beforehand. So I had to prepare my project beforehand. So I will show you what I have done. I have exported the project that I have there. And once we have it exported, I will actually rename the downloaded file to .zip. Instead of .woodford, it will be named .zip. So let me show you the contents of that file. Here it is. Maybe you've heard about this, maybe not, but the exported Woodford project is actually a zip file. And if I open it, you can see its contents. And all I have done is that I have added one file, offline map XML, into the root of the zip file. That's all I had to do. And then I just renamed the file back to .woodford and imported it back to the Woodford tool. Let me show you the content of the offline map XML as well. Here it is. And as you can see, it's basically just a modified version of the XML I went through in the PowerPoint presentation. Basically 2 regions, world and Bratislava. I even adjusted the zoom levels to not be that big, and it still took a couple of minutes to download. Now I can switch to the mobile application and check the setup. Here we go. And here you can see that there is the show map option. There is the default provider or Mapbox. So I have switched to Mapbox. And if I go to map, open the map, you will see here in the bottom left corner, there is Mapbox, meaning that it's really right now using the Mapbox map to display accounts, contacts, leads, and the map underneath those. And now I should come to the point where I will show you this in offline or without connectivity, but that would mean that I have to disable Wi-Fi on my iPad. And if I would do that, you would lose the screen. You wouldn't see my iPad screen at all. So at this point, I have to say that you will have to believe me that it will start working also in the offline mode. But I really encourage you to try it out with the version that you already have at your disposal, and you will be able to test it yourself. The next part, the next section was about the flexible forms. So let me continue with that, and let me show you the Woodford tool and the setup of the Flexi Forms. Okay, so I'll open my project. and go on to the account. Here is my form. And the first thing I will do, I will make sure that this form uses the flexible form layout. Now I will add a couple of more items like the activity list, for example. Let's add also an iframe, my standard Google search example. We can put map as well and media tab for signature. So now we have this height here, which is something like a unit 2. Again, I'm not sure what this exactly means or how I would translate this to you, what it means. But now I can put, with the new version, I can put 200 pseudopixels in here. And if I will do that for all the elements, you will notice that they will have exactly the same size. And this might not sound like much, but this was something that was basically quite difficult to achieve with the previous version of our tool. So let me publish the project and synchronize and switch to the mobile device. Okay, so accounts, the form, edit, and as you can see, all the elements now have the same size, 200 pseudopixels as I have defined. Now this is only the start, right? Now you have much more precise control over how the elements are displayed. But you can start being creative with this. And if I switch back to Woodford, one of my ideas or my favorite ideas about this is that now you can specify iframes which have very interesting sizes. Like let's put here 50 pixels and let's make this one large. Or we can make one of the lists quite big, 800 pixels, and publish. Switch back to the app. In this case, if I go to the bike store, you will see that the Google iframe is now quite wide and quite thin. But maybe this doesn't make sense for the Google, but if you have some offline HTML file with some buttons in here, it can be very useful. Or if you want to display progress of some process in here, again using an offline HTML, that can be very useful. Or if you have very long lists, again, a very nice setting of how to achieve the exact look that you are after. So this was the second demo, and this brings me to the third part of my presentation, which is the most technical and will cover new things in reports, in rules, and in JavaScript. I will start with the reports, and I have to again just recap that this is our own reporting or document generation feature, which works also offline without connectivity and can generate a PDF, Excel file, Word, or XML. It's not the dynamic CRM or SSRS report, it's custom Resco format for single or multiple records and so on. The first nice addition to mobile reports is a new element in Report Designer. It's called signature. And I know that there is a way how to put signatures, which I mean notes from mobile CRM into reports. This is something different, and it only works with PDF because it's a special element used by Adobe Acrobat Reader. And if you put that signature element here it will appear in the PDF as something like this. And as I said, it's only the Adobe Acrobat Reader program that can work with this and can actually offer you the signing. So the user would have to open that PDF document with this program and then click on the sign here, or basically the sign element, to provide the signature. This will actually also digitally sign the document, so there is some advanced security. And all you have to do is just use the Add Sign button in the report designer. What I wanted to say about this, that this was requested by one of our customers, and for their scenario, it was a situation where they had Windows devices, and they also had the additional device where they were taking signatures. It was a signature pad. And Adobe Acrobat can work with this type of device, and the signature can be provided in here. But also because of the legal requirements in that country, it wasn't enough just to provide the image of that signature. Obviously, that signature had to have some other features like some pressure points, etc., etc. But also the document had to be digitally signed afterwards, so no modifications could be done. All of this can be achieved with the signature element, which is a new feature in mobile reports. Additionally, we have added aggregated fields into reports. So up until this point, you are able only to put fields onto reports, which will actual fields on entities, like if you have created a report for an order, you could only put total amount and fields from that order into that report. But if you wanted to calculate the total amount for all the orders, or for all the orders for certain customers, you weren't able to do this because such a field was nowhere available. Now you can add aggregates or calculated fields into reports. Additionally, and what you would expect, these aggregates can be grouped and the whole fetch can be sorted. So again, additional features to make it to make the reports more business oriented. To make it even more streamlined and to available more functionality, we have a new variable in the data sources called fetch table. This is a quite technical thing. I will try to explain it in a sec. It's meant to increase the performance, and you can use fetch table lookup, additional variable, to access the values. I've tried to display this on a slide, on a simple diagram. Basically, the fetch table requires a fetch, basically an entity which you want to display in here, and the records will be stored in the memory in a table-like structure, which has a key and a couple of values. If you want to access these records from the fetch table, you have to use fetch table lookup and specify the key. What I mean by this is that if I have some contacts in here, Peter, Joseph, with some numbers in the fetch table, I can say that in the fetch table lookup, I will provide you just the key, Joseph, and then I will have access to the actual values. Similarly, if I would provide Peter to the fetch table lookup, I will access these values. Again, I'll just like to say that this is quite technical feature, or something that is important for the technical aspect of how mobile reports are executed and done. And I will try to show it in a short demonstration. We have also added a couple of another fields, like improvements, like pre-selecting a report. So if you add a command to run a report on a form, you can now pre-select which report it will run. You can also set now culture in formatting. There are also row index and page count variables if you would like to use them in the report. So let me show you some of this in the demo. I will switch to Woodford. And instead of working with the project, I will go into the mobile reports section and create a completely new report. My report will show one account or multiple accounts opportunities. And it's for the account, and it's for single record and for lists of records as well, so for both. I will start with this very simple report. I will not really take care of the style. I'll just create what I want in a simple table-like structure. So here I have the accounts that the user has selected. It can be one account or multiple accounts. And what I would like to do, I would like to now take orders for these accounts. So to do that, I will click Add here. Again, where I am, in the body section, I have clicked Edit Sources, and here I will add one new data source. I will call this Orders. I will set that it's a fetch table, and I will say that it has to read the orders. Now I have to specify the table key. And if I jump back to my presentation, to the example that I have shown, this is the value in the table which I will use later to get to the actual rows. And since I don't know which I want to use, I will just write something like customer group by. This is a name I will use later, so I will just copy it for now. So what this does at this very moment, it will load all the orders into the structure which we call fetch table. Now I will click on aggregate, because I don't want all the orders, I want some information from this order, and this information is how much they are doing. So I will take total amount and I will sum the total amount for all the orders. I will also add order, and instead of sum I will select count. So now I will count the amount of the orders, and I want to divide this by customers. So I will select group by. So what this does, for every customer it will sum the total amounts or all the orders and the amount of orders for this customer. This last part is to specify alias. So if you want to call this somehow, and I want to call this one actually the group by. So this one now I'm saying will be the key to my fetch table, which I will use later to display the content of this table. So I'm set up so I can prepare my table. So here I will add a cell. I will call this one name, and this will be actually just a constant. So this will be the header of my table. I will add two more columns. This will be total amount. Like this, and this will be the count of orders. So these are only the names for the columns, and the actual columns will come here. But before I can put the data in here, I have to click on the repeater and look at the data sources. Since I have a fetch table, I now need some way how to access the records from the table, and to do that I have to use fetch table lookup. I will call it order data, and here I have to specify from which table I want to take it. I've named my variable orders, so this is what I will specify. And now I have to specify the key. As you recall, that was the one which I called customer group by, and it was basically the customer ID. Here I'm in the repeater. That means that it goes through all the accounts that the user has selected, and I have the accounts information available here. So I will say that from the current account, which is now in the table, I want to use the account ID. It's account ID. So this means that from the order table, it will take the line which corresponds to current account ID in the repeater, so in the table that is being displayed. If I have set this up correctly, new fields will appear here. So I can put order data sum in here and order data count in here. So I will have a table with header name, total amount, and count. And for each account that the user selects, I will display the sum for its total amount for all its orders and the count of all its orders. I'm done with my report. So the last part which I need to do is go to mobile project, open it up, and it was a report for the account. So I can go on to the form, add run mobile report. And now this is a new part where I can select only use the account opportunities. Okay, I've named it incorrectly. It should have been accounts orders. Similarly, I have done this previously for the view, so I have run mobile report in here. So I can publish and switch to my mobile device. Okay. So if I open accounts, and if I tap and hold for a little while, these little circles will appear, which means that I can select the records which I want to use. So let's select a couple of those and click Run Mobile Report here on the top. Let's select the accounts opportunities incorrectly named. I could change that to all the records in accounts, but I can just use the selected. And if I run this, here is my report. Let me make it slightly larger so you can see the names of all the records that I have selected. You can see the total amount combined for all them and how many orders for this particular account are there. As I said, this wasn't possible before. This is something that is new, and also there is some performance consideration for this. Just to show you that we have it also on the form, I can open that report in here, and you will see that the very same report is available also for one record. Okay. We have added very useful feature, editable lists, a couple of versions ago. So right now, instead of having to go to the form to change just one field on the record, you can just do it right from the view. This requires a little bit of setup in Woodford, but once it's done, you can modify the fields from the view without having to go to the form. This is great, but it has one limitation. There was no validation. So if you would like to have there some email, you couldn't validate if it contains the @ sign, the dot, and so on. If you require the date within a certain range, you couldn't validate for that. And we understood that this was a big limitation, so we come now with a way how to validate the editable list input. It's for edit cells and direct edit cells, and for this very moment, it requires JavaScript because it's much more complex and much more capable. There are two events, OnSave and OnChange, but this OnChange event is called for edit cells only. I will get to that. So basically, when you will use edit cells and when you will be done with all the editing and the user hits save, your OnSave event will be called. And you can do two things. You can set the error message if you have validated the fields and they are not correct, or you can use the suspend resume save architecture, which we also have for the forms, if you want to perform some additional asynchronous calls. If you change just one of the fields and you are using the edit cells, the onChange event will be called. It doesn't have too much power since there is not much you can do there, but what you can do there is you can update some relationships or perform some calculations based on one of the field changing. The reason why this is limited is that the onChange event has only access to the actual row where the change has happened. If you would be using direct edit, the onChange event is not available because immediately after you change one of the cells, one of the fields on the view, the OnSave event will be triggered where you have again both of these to your disposal. I will show you how this works in the demo. So let me start perhaps with two of the files that I have here. So this is the Visual Studio showing one of the files which I have prepared and one of the files that is available with this webinar. And here, besides the standard JavaScript bridge boilerplate, we have to call Mobile CRM entity list OnSave. So I'm basically defining that in my JavaScript I want to handle what happens during saving. And here, during saving, I will get the list or the entities, the rows that have been modified by the user. I will go through these entities. I will take email address of each one, and if it doesn't contain the @ or the dot, I will save this email address for later. Because once I will go through all the modified records, all the modified rows, I will check if there is at least one invalid email, and if there is, on the entity list, I will set the error message. And I will write to the user, because by setting the error message, I'm stopping the save of that record or records, and instead I will show an error message with the emails that are incorrect. In my second example, I'm doing something very similar, but this time I'm checking if an account with the same name doesn't already exist. And to do that, I have to use fetch. And unfortunately, fetch is asynchronous. That means that if I wouldn't call susp and save, this function would end and it would never get to these results. So, to make sure that my execution will not stop before I get to do something, I have to call susp and save. And as soon as my fetch call will return the results and basically will check if the same name doesn't exist somewhere. If it doesn't, I can just resume the save. But if it does, I again will construct the error message, but this time I will put it into the resume save as a parameter. Let me show you this in the app. So I have to put this first into Woodford. So here are my files. I can save the content of the offline HTML folder. And I will go into the account view. I will change this to email, and I will change this part to direct edit. So I will be now able to change the email right away. But I want to provide the email validation. So I will click on iframe and I will select the email HTML. Okay, this should be it. So now I can switch to the mobile app. To show you how it works. Okay. So accounts, I'll try to click on the email section. All right. So if I, for example, delete it completely, write something else, and try to hit done, I'm in direct edit. That means that as soon as I hit done, the application will try to save that particular row, so that particular record. And my JavaScript actually ran. It found that this is not a valid email. But what also happened is that the old value is back here. The reason for this is that since it's a direct edit, it could either save the record or discard it. So the new modified record was immediately discarded, and we are back at the correct state. Let me show you what will happen if I use the, just a sec, if I use the other mode. So instead of direct edit, I will use the edit mode, and I will put the edit mode on the account name and change the iframe for the duplicate detection. All right. If I open account, you can notice that here on the bottom I have balcony and basement accounts. So if I click on the A bike store, let's change it to balcony. And let's change this one, the active cycling, to basement. Done. Here is a new icon. This means that I can now save the list. And if I try to do that, I will get my error message. It has already found that these are existing accounts. What's also interesting is that if I try to switch to contacts, I will see a dialog if I want to save and close or discard. If I would select save and close from here, again, my code would run. You can't see it because my screen sharing, okay, is slow. But again, my logic has been hit. So the only way for me to really do something about it is to either change this back to some valid names, or to go here and select discard changes. Since we are already quite short on time, I will just quickly go through this last part, the additions to form rules, where we have added 3 interesting things, like now you can work with the datum fields more effectively and get the information about the year, the hour, or even the day in week for the date time using the getDatePart operator. You can much more easily format strings using just format single. So if you want to display some text with a slightly different setting, you can use format single. Previously there was this format option, but it was too complex. And finally, a very useful feature is that now you can sort fetch results. So if you were using load fetch operator to load one of the records, you could do that previously, but if your fetch would return more records, like for example, more orders that are associated to one account, you couldn't select which one order you would get back, because the load fetch operator would just get one back. So it was basically arbitrary if your fetch returned more than one record. Now you can specify ordering, which means that if you want to get the latest order, if you want to get the order which has the most total amount or highest total amount and so on, you can now do this by specifying orders. I will skip this one demo because we already have taken 1 hour, and just briefly mention other features that you have to know about. we have much improved the SharePoint synchronization, and not only that, there is a way how you can add synchronization filters for SharePoint. So for example, for different file types, you can specify what will be the maximum size that will be downloaded and so on. On iOS, you can use password managers to log in, so some third-party applications, or even switch in navigation to using different providers like Waze or Sygic. And there is many more. I'm pretty sure you have received the newsletter with the link to all the features. So if you haven't, I encourage you to browse through that and find out if there is something you wouldn't like to use. This is everything from my end. And right now, I will check the questions that you have probably written during my presentation. If you have any more questions, feel free to write them into the webinar, GoToWebinar window right now, and I will try to answer. So let me check it very quickly. First question about image editor available for all platforms. Yes, it is available on all the platforms, iOS, Android, Windows. There is a question about the view layout and the more complex view layout. I assume this relates to the flexible forms, or probably not. Based on the time, I would say that this is more about the list headers, and where you have a different look, where maybe you have multiple cells under each other. In that case, the list header is still auto-generated, so it will correspond to the look of your row. Unfortunately, that's the limitation for now, but as I said, in next version, you will be able to define the list headers on your own. Windows, if will be covered for the offline maps feature. At the moment, I cannot tell. I know that we are already working on Android, that I can confirm. But for the Windows platform, I personally don't see a reason why not. But this is maybe a question to my colleagues who are actually working on this part of the solution, and probably something that would require even more in-depth investigation on our end. A question about digital signatures on the PDF signature feature. Here, the question is which types of digital signatures we support. And this is not a question to us. As I mentioned, the digital signing is actually performed by the Adobe Acrobat Reader program. So it's really the question of what the Adobe Reader supports. Let me read through the question. Okay, duplicate detection. I have created a simple example on the editable lists for detecting the duplicate. And the question is, if you have duplicate detection in CRM, what does it mean? Will the duplicate detection in CRM run before my view HTML, JavaScript detection, or when they will run? The answer is that the duplicate detection from CRM will not run. The reason is that the duplicate detection runs only when you work with the form. The duplicate detection from CRM. So the duplicate detection from CRM is only executed when you try to save the form. Another question is about the aggregate functionality to be supported on row scripts. That means on the views or on the lists. Do we plan something like that? I don't know. I'm not sure if something like this is on our to-do list yet, but it's a topic that we can discuss definitely now once we have it in the reporting engine. There is the question about the edit mode, so not the direct edit, but the edit mode, if it was available in the previous versions as well. Yes, I believe that the editable lists in this state were available for quite a few versions. I'm not sure, maybe even version 8.3. Sending report by email. Yes, the mobile reports can be very easily sent by email. It's basically one of the actions once the report is generated. If you click in the top right corner into the menu, there will be an action to send via email. Interesting question about Woodford and HTML version of it. Maybe you have noticed that we have a beta version of Woodford, which is not completely written in Silverlight, but certain parts are already ported in HTML. We are working piece by piece, and I expect that the version which has even more parts in HTML will be available with the next release, but I don't expect that the full Woodford will be HTML based in the next release, so in the first half of this year. My expectation is that by the end of this year, it will be fully ported to HTML, or maybe with some little exceptions, but that is the plan we are going for. There is a question about resizing images, and if the image editor can have this ability. There is a resize feature on the media tab. I'm not sure if it's on the note itself. So if you are opening a picture or a photo from notes, maybe there is not the resize feature available. And it's not a feature that you have to click edit image and there resize. It's a feature that it's available right on the picture. If it's not there, we can consider adding there, or I think that it makes also perfect sense to have it in the image editor, so I will add it to our to-do list. Project hierarchy, and if there are some features that were added to this part of our solution. At this moment, or with the version 10.0, there are not, but I have already seen some work about which will highlight certain parts of the mobile project, which is being taken from the parent project and so on. So some visualization within the mobile projects showing you the project hierarchy. That is something that will come with the next version, so 10.1. And at the moment, the final question which I have in the GoToWebinar window, offline map feature for many users, 300 users for the whole territory or for the full customer. I guess that the question goes to the regions, and that I mentioned that the download of the regions can take a bit of time. I would recommend maybe segmenting. I'm not sure, but I expect that the customer has the people divided into some territories or regions, and therefore you can create different mobile projects for the regions where the user is going to. So that would be my answer for now. But obviously, if the situation is more complex, I would love to hear more about it via email. So you can shoot an email to me or shoot an email to mobile support, and we can talk about that. I can see that there is also additional information that there are 90 regions in Russia where you would like to utilize this. It doesn't have to relate to the region which you have in Russia geographically. It's a region that you just define custom in the XML, so you can have bigger or smaller regions based on what your users are visiting, where they are going. So, but again, If you would like to discuss this in more detail, please write an email and we will take it from there. So this is it from me for today. I thank you very much for your attention. As I said in the beginning, I really believe that this is a very feature-packed release, so I hope that you've liked what you have seen and that you can utilize it very quickly in your projects. So thanks again, and hope to see you again next time.